Okay, I am live. I am live. Hello, 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 and welcome to this 6-week series about creating and building leadership capacity. Now, I am your host, Nicole Roan, and I am coming to you with almost 2 decades, almost 20 years of HR leadership experience. And I really started this series because as an HR leader and capacity coach, I am responsible for organizing and building thriving company cultures. I handle some complex employee and business issues, and I'm helping folks to maximize their resources at the end of the day. Now, over the last 2 decades, I've had the opportunity really to sit eyeball to eyeball with people from all walks of life, with all kinds of titles. And I've been coaching people both personally and professionally. Now, what I've really learned during this time is that most of us want to be better leaders, right? Raise a hand. Yes, no, maybe so. I don't think that you would be here if you didn't. You wouldn't be listening and you wouldn't be watching. So I know that I'm in some really good company. Whether you desire to be a better leader in your organization, in your business, or in your family, it requires having capacity. Okay. And I'm going to share my definition of what capacity means in a little bit. But what you really need to know is that this series is dedicated to helping you become a better leader across the board. Now, what is capacity, right? I consider capacity to be the amount of time, energy, and resources that you have available to navigate and manage all the moving parts of your life. And for me, I can't tell you how many times I have had, employees, clients, and even various leaders come walk into my office trying to figure out and ask me, Nicole, how can I manage all my competing priorities that are on my plate while being an effective leader? And my answer has been the key is building and creating capacity. So today I am going to be talking about why self-care is a requirement, not a luxury, not a nice to have, but a requirement, and it's essential for all leaders. And I want you to remember that leadership is not about your title, right? I don't care what your title is. It's a mindset. It's really a way of being, and it's a behavior. So throughout this session today, I am going to share number one, like I said, why self-care is a necessity, including how it impacts your ability to lead. I'm going to give you a few practical strategies on how to help you avoid the B word, burnout. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about that because I know as a leader, a business owner, a mom, a wife, all the things, burnout can creep up on you. And then I'm going to end by giving you a couple of tips for setting boundaries and really explaining how setting them allows you to achieve more by doing less. Now, let me say this. I'm a firm believer that from my experience in, Fortune 500 companies, working with international corporations, as well as working with individuals from all walks of life, that one of the keys to managing and building your capacity is to unlock your leadership potential by putting yourself at the top of your priority list. And this is why, number one, I want you to understand that self-care fuels leadership clarity. When you prioritize your well-being, you are creating mental clarity, you're creating emotional balance, and those two things really lead to better decision-making and more focused leadership. I've seen it time and time again where there are leaders who are burning the candle at both ends, really to meet the demands of work, of business, of family, yet they're walking around, sometimes looking like zombies, no judgment, but walking around exhausted and frustrated. And then you don't even have the mental capacity to make a decision. You have to remember that when you self-sacrifice your sleep and your well-being, that is not sustainable. And it will eventually take a toll on your health, your output, or both. And if this is your first time hearing my voice or seeing me, what you need to know is that I'm a living witness to that, right? I've seen it play out about almost 6 years ago, where because I was burning the candle at both ends, because I was doing all the things and not, putting myself at the top of the priority list, I ended up having to be off work for a month and being in the hospital fighting for my life because of the effects of not doing so. Okay. So I want to talk about a second reason as to why self-care is important for leaders. You need to understand that self-care is about energy management, not just time management. And I know we talk about time management and time blocking, and I'm a huge proponent of those things. But I'm in this instance talking about how to really manage your energy as well. And when I'm talking about self-care, I'm not talking about the manicures, the pedicures, the massages, and the bubble baths. Now, yes, those are nice to have, and they are part of my own self-care routine that I practice on a regular basis. But what I'm talking about is the kind of self-care that helps you manage your time and your energy. And so this is going to include asking yourself some hard questions. Some questions like, is this the highest and best use of my time? Right? Are the projects and tasks that I'm working on draining me because I'm really not fulfilled and disconnected to the work that I'm doing? Is what's happening outside of work impacting how I show up? These questions really require you to be honest with yourself about what's working, what's not working, and what potentially needs to shift. Now, as a leader who prioritizes in self-care in this way, this allows you to really sustain higher energy levels, right? Which allows you to be more present, to be more engaged, and then to be more effective with your teams. Now, last but not least, and then I'm going to move on to burnout prevention, is that when you practice self-care as a leader, you are literally leading by example. So I have a question, and if you're live or catching the replay, put me in the chat or raise your hand. I want to ask, how many times have you gotten after work emails, texts, or phone calls from leaders or clients or coworkers? Yes, no, maybe so. Now, I don't know about you, but I can remember getting those after work messages from leaders and feeling like, oh, okay, this is that kind of company culture. And what I experience, and I've heard others say, is that it's almost like an unsaid expectation that's being communicated, right? The thought is, if my manager is working late, then I probably should be too. And on the personal side, do you have people that call you when they know you're at work? Or assume that because you're working from home, you're available, right? Or blow you up when they know good and darn well that you are out on vacation trying to live your best life? Yeah. Now, in both of these situations, I want you to understand that you have to lead by example. As a leader on the professional side, you set the tone for the culture of your organization or business by I'm going to repeat, not working when you're supposed to be off, and then not communicating with your team when they're supposed to be, off, or if it's after hours. When you lead in this way, you're showing with actions. And remember, leadership is a behavior, right? It's an action. You're showing with your actions that not only are you prioritizing yourself and your self-care, but you're demonstrating to your team that self-care is essential and valued for you and for them. So when they see you value your own well-being, it empowers them to do the same. And it really creates this healthier organizational culture. Now, the same is true on the personal side. If you allow your friends and family to disrupt you while you are working, or call all times of night, or impede on your vacation, you're literally teaching them how to treat you. And I know I'm going to talk a little bit about boundaries in just a bit, but really, I just want you to know that you have to lead by example in these personal situations too. For me, sometimes that looks like do not answer the phone, or putting your phone on D&D, do not disturb, like I do after about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And if you're on vacation, try to be in the moment. There's nothing wrong with, I don't know if you all have overprotective parents, but my mom at this big old age still calls me to make sure that I made it where I said I'm going to be, but I make sure to try to be in the moment as well. Okay. So let's talk about how to stop or prevent the burnout cycle. Okay. I want to share 3 simple self-care habits for busy leaders like yourself. Now, the first one is going to come as no surprise. It's really to recognize the early signs of burnout. And what we need to understand is that burnout does not just happen overnight, right? Oftentimes we are ignoring or dismissing the signs. And so I want to share a couple of some of the telltale signs. One of the first ones is physical symptoms. So think about it like this. That headache that you've had for a week, even after taking medicine, is not normal. Okay? And neither is your stomach being in knots all the time. Like, you have to pay attention to what your body is telling you. Our body is always giving us signs and signals, but sometimes we chalk it up to, being a good leader or being a good wife or being a good mom or being a good business owner. No, please pay attention to those physical symptoms. Emotional exhaustion is another sign. So for me, this looks and feels like, if you are constantly feeling overwhelmed or depleted and drained, or if you feel like life just keeps life and nonstop, right? I need you to pause and figure out what's going on. Pause to figure out the root cause of that, because it's likely that it could be you approaching burnout. Now, the last sign that I'll share as a telltale sign of burnout is sleep issues. And so I say this knowing that we live in a world of a whole lot of crazy right now. But if you are normally able to sleep well, so you're able to get to sleep and stay asleep, regularly, and you've noticed that your sleep patterns are off, you might be approaching burnout. So I want you to pay attention to those. Okay. It's important for you to learn how to identify those stress triggers and those warning signs, because before they escalate to full blown burnout, when you catch them early, it allows you to take the preventative actions so that you can stay productive without overextending yourself. Okay. So let's talk about tip number 2 for preventing burnout. One of the things that I love is practicing micro self-care moments. So self-care doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing. Again, I take my self-care weekends. I get, the manis, the pedis, the massages, but I also feel and know that it's important to make time to incorporate simple, time-efficient practices throughout the day. So some of my favorites are literally just taking a minute to pause and roll in my shoulders like this. If you're like me and you carry tension all up in here, right? You want to stretch that out just for a second, because that allows you to close your eyes, to take a couple of breaths, and to move, right? So that's a really micro self-care moment. Another one is really to take a 15-minute break, but it has to be away from your desk and away from your computer. And I'm saying that because most of the time, some of us will, hold going to the bathroom or wait to eat or doing all those things so you can finish the email, or so you can, finish the PowerPoint, make one more phone call. But when you take a 15-minute break away from your desk and away from your computer, it gives your eyes a break as well. So whatever it is that you choose, know that these micro self-care moments will help you to restore your energy, your focus, and of course your productivity throughout the day without massively disrupting your schedule. This last tip that I have for preventing burnout is really to leverage routines for consistency. And so this can be a morning routine, it could be an evening routine, but the point is to get a routine in place, because when you have a routine, it allows you to do the preventative work that I just talked about to prevent burnout. And so this could be journaling, it could be meditation, it could be exercise. For me, I have a morning routine and I have an evening routine and I have a weekend routine, because I know that there are so many goals and things that I have that I want to accomplish. There are so many competing priorities, but having these routines helps to maintain balance even during the busiest of times. So if you don't have a routine, I really encourage you to do that. Now, I want to talk about the power of boundaries, okay? And how when you have boundaries in place, you literally achieve more by doing less, right? It might sound funny, but it's the truth. And part of the reason is because number one, let's be honest, boundaries boost your productivity, right? When you are able to set clear limits around your time, your responsibility, your energy, AKA managing your capacity, you have the ability to focus on high priority tasks, right? And then that helps you to eliminate distractions and keeps you from diluting your effectiveness. So you have to be clear on why it's important for you to set those clear limits around what you're spending your time on, what you're giving your, energy to, okay? Another one that I want you to understand is that saying no is a leadership skill, right? I used to say, I think this was when I was at BMO. We would try to figure out, because as an HR leader, you have a lot that's being put on you, especially if you are a business partner or if you are, a generalist or someone who's really managing all the facets in an HR space, you're being pulled in different directions. And so one of the things that my team and I would practice with each other was effectively challenging, right? So pushing back and saying no as a leadership skill. And so part of that means being able to understand how and why you need to say no to the non-essential tasks or meetings that really preserve your energy and attention for not only what truly matters, but what is really driving those better business results for you and your team. And so I can recall being invited to meetings that I didn't have any business in. And my effective challenge was, do you need me there or do you want me there? What value am I bringing to this meeting? And oftentimes it was just for me to sit in when I could have been using my time, energy, AKA capacity for other things. So learn how to develop that leadership skill of saying no in a tactful and professional way. The last thing that I want to share with you is that as a leader, you have to understand that boundaries are a form of self-respect. Now, I talked about this a little bit earlier when we were, mentioning the self-care and leading by example. What I mean by this is that when you set boundaries, it signals a couple of things, right? Number one, it's going to signal that you respect your own needs and well-being, right? A lot of times as leaders, we're taking on more and we are, trying to do all the things to prove that we're good leaders. The truth is, the more that you do that, right, it's okay. And, I do recommend that you reach across the aisle, that you are able to help out in different departments. I know what that's like. We're working on small but mighty teams, right? But you also have to understand that you have to respect your own needs and your well-being. And so it's okay for you to say, actually, I don't have the capacity for that, right? So when you're setting boundaries as a form of self-respect, you got to understand that it also fosters some mutual respect from your colleagues, your clients, and your teammates, right? So if you are working in the business, I remember, when I was working full-time in my coaching and consulting business, having clients that wanted to meet at 9 o'clock at night. And at first, as I was growing my business, I'm like, yeah, I can meet at 9 o'clock at night, right? I'm growing my practice and whatnot. But no, I had to understand that I still needed to do what was best for me. And meeting at 9 o'clock is not okay for me. Are there some instances where I can be flexible? Of course, because as my good friend Keisha Hicks says, flexible people don't get bent out of shape. But the boundaries that you establish to protect your time, to protect your energy, are going to allow you to have the mental clarity and the mental capacity to make good decisions, to be focused, to be engaged, to not walk around exhausted. And that's exactly why I'm doing this series, right? Because I want each and every one of us to be able to build our leadership capacity. And it really does require you to practice self-care. It's not a luxury. It's not a nice to have. It's a necessity. Because in order for you to show up in excellence, to do what you do, in your business, in your organization, and again, even in your families, it requires you to practice self-care. Now, I am going to be back here next week for the next 5 weeks. I'm doing this series on building leadership capacity. So I invite you to join me back here at the same time. And of course, if you are looking for someone to come in and coach and train your organization, I would absolutely love to. I will drop my website in the chat. It is NicoleRoan.com. Would love to come in and help you to make sure that your organization or your business, or even you as an individual, are effectively managing your capacity. Talk to you next week.